When painting, tiling, roofing, netting, flooring, or paneling, all of these would include calculating surface area before purchasing materials. Today's episode is based on painting, netting, and roofing. So we'll start with the basic shapes. These are the shapes that we regularly use in geometry. They're also the shapes that we regularly use in construction, but they're not very helpful when figuring out the surface area. We need to take these 3D shapes and translate them into 2D shapes. Here we unravel each of our 3D objects to create 2D figures. This will help us calculate how much area is actually involved. Let's start with the rectangular prism, since the rectangular prism is basically any 2x4. So we've got a 2x4, which is a chunk of lumber. Notice, 2x4 means 2 inches by 4 inches, which is what the dimensions are before the drying process. Lumber is cut and then dried. So when we unravel it, we're going to have to know the exact measurements. And the exact measurements are really about 1.5 inches by 3.5 inches, and then about 8 feet long. So I put the 1.5 inches there, the 3.5 inches there, and the 8 feet over here. Notice, just like in the regions for geometry, 8 feet is really 96 inches. You have to be very careful that all of your units match. Then we can figure out the area of each of the smaller rectangles. That will tell us how much paint we need for the entire 2x4. Area is base times height. We multiply it, get 336 inches squared. Notice the top and bottom of the 2x4 should be the same. So should the sides. So the sides are different from the top and bottom, but they are matching each other. And then we've got the ends. What we do is we take all of these calculations, we add them up, and we get 970 inches squared. That is how much surface area is in a 2x4. Now we go to our regular home construction store, and we see all of the different varieties of paints. We've got gallon, we've got quart, we've got pints, we've got different colors, we've got gloss, we've got matte. There are so many different types of finishes and primers and all of that good stuff. And the question is, which one do we want? Well, depending on your project depends on the type of paint you want. We selected a paint with a primer in it. We also then need to figure out what size we want. In order to figure out the size, that's a conversion. If we zoom in on a paint can, it will tell us that there is a conversion. Notice, it will give you a measurement for how many square feet it will cover if you're doing 1 coat or 2 coats, because in multiple cases you want 2 coats, and for Orzo's porch we definitely want 2 coats. So we start with this 970 inches squared. How did we get that? Well, we had to add up all of the little blocks. Now that we have that, we can do our conversion. So we got to go from inches squared to feet squared. Notice it's not the same as inches to feet. Inches squared to feet squared is 12 squared to 1 squared. Then we need to go from feet squared to gallon. Multiply those together and we get 0.0269 gallons. Notice each time we are multiplying those. So to get a 2x4 covered, we would not be wanting a full gallon. To get a full gallon would be a very, very big waste of. So let's take a look at what a pint would cover. We start with 4 quarts in 1 gallon, and 2 pints in a quart. That means 0.22 pints are necessary to cover my 2x4. So if I were only covering one 2x4, we would want 0.22 pints. So even the pint is extremely large for our project. Would we want to do this for each 2x4? Well, that's a good question. Here's Mama Izzo painting our 2x4s and all of the other varieties of lumber that we used. We do not want to calculate the entire surface area of each of these to figure out the paint. In fact, it's pretty useless to do it for any small project like this, because as we noticed, if you buy a pint, you should have enough to cover your project. So why would we do this? Why would we calculate out the surface area? Well, if you're painting a room, that could be a whole lot bigger. So you might need more than just a pint. If you're painting a whole house, then you definitely need to calculate out how many gallons you need before you start your job. If you're painting a building, it gets even worse. But it could also be if you're painting multiple small items. If you are part of a company or business that produces multiple small items, you need to know how much paint is required for each individual item so you can multiply it and figure out how much you need for the entire process for all of the small items you plan on making. Mostly, it's about saving money. You don't want to purchase a gallon of paint or 10 gallons of paint if 1 pint will suffice. Here we see Papa Izzo leaving Mama Izzo in charge of painting. He trusts her a lot. But not to worry. I'm here to help out. Sort of. Notice how everything needs to be painted. Not only the porch, but also the hook, the frame, the board, the roof, the floor, everything. No, we did not calculate the surface area before we began to paint, and by the time we were about finished with the second coat, we probably should have. Once both coats of paint are dry, Papa Izzo must attach the screen. To do so, he uses a staple gun and then a hammer to make sure that each staple is flush with the lumber. Once the netting is roughly secured by the staples, I cut the plastic edge material so that the net will stay in place. Does mean that I get to use a saw. Not a power saw though. Power saws are dangerous. Every edge of the net must be secured and then trimmed. It is a very labor-intensive process. Now that the porch is painted and the screen is in place, it is time to start the roof. For this roof, we are going to be using just a sheet of regular plastic. This will help keep the rain off of Port Orzo. The sheet has to be measured first, and then a very strong adhesive is caulked onto the sheet of plastic and spread out using a trowel. The roof is set in place, and then we use a roller to get rid of any air bubbles and to adhere the roof plastic more firmly to the roof itself. Once the roof is set and dried onto the wood, we use the same plastic edge material to buckle it down in place. Papa Izzo takes care of drilling and nailing the plastic edge material into place, while I go around and paint all of the staples so that they do not rust when the rain comes. Finally, Mama and Papa Izzo put the porch into place. And survey says accepted. Yep,